A D.C. police commander is under investigation for allegedly making changes to crime statistics in his district. Tonight, the police department confirms Michael Pulliam was placed on paid administrative leave in mid-May, a move that came just a week after Pulliam filed an equal opportunity complaint against an assistant chief. And the police union accused the department of deliberately falsifying crime data.
Well, do we not have an interesting story out of the District of Columbia that involves a back-and-forth administrative battle between two high-ranking officers, and of course the manipulation of crime data that now the police union has weighed in on, and they're essentially saying not only is it happening, but it was not just this one guy. It seems to be a conspiracy by the supervisors at these departments in order to make the data look significantly better than it actually is. Now, of course, this brings up memories of the hit TV show The Wire, of the police juking the stats in that show.
She wants me to juke the stats for Carcetti this quarter and the next. Hide the crime, get him elected as governor, and make her the mayor.
So do it. Burrell juked them before you. Warren Frazier before him. And after you go on Rawls or whoever will juke them, so what?
But as of right now, it appears that these are all just allegations, or as the super mayor would call them, alizations.
False alizations and not facts.
So what we're going to do throughout the course of this video is to break down whether or not these changes and these tactics could actually work, and then we're going to assess the likelihood of the crime drop going on in the District of Columbia. But before we get into that, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
Hi there, the D.C. Police Union is putting its allegations on the record tonight, claiming police supervisors in the department are manipulating crime data to make it appear violent crime has fallen considerably when compared to last year. As of today, according to the D.C. Police website, crime is down 25%, a decrease the chairman of the police union calls preposterous. The union's allegations come as the former commander of the 3rd District stands accused of doing what the union says is being done day in and day out.
To areas where we know that
That's Michael Pulliam standing with the chief of police at a recent news conference. At the time, he was the commander of the 3rd District, which patrols the neighborhoods of Adams Morgan and Columbia Heights. In early May, 5 law enforcement sources familiar with the investigation tell News 4 Pulliam was placed on administrative leave with pay and told he was under investigation for questionable changes to crime data. A move that came just about a week after he filed an EEOC complaint against Executive Assistant Chief of Police Andre Wright, according to 3 law enforcement sources familiar with the complaint.
So one of the things that's absolutely crucial about this story is that essentially the union is making the case that this supervisor was very likely manipulating the crime statistics. However, this supervisor wasn't just doing it on his own in order to make himself look better. This is the new protocol that a lot of officers in the rank and file are observing as they are on the force. And in reality, the only reason this guy is being thrown under the bus is due to the fact that he filed that equal opportunity employment complaint against his supervisor for reasons that will be revealed to us later in this local news segment. And in my opinion, this sounds 100% sensible. Essentially, the police end up doing something to manipulate the data. This is a top-down mandate because obviously it's not sensible for you to risk your job in order to do so. And then if somebody gets out of line in another regard, you can use the fact that you push them into doing this questionable activity as a way to hit them hard back if they ever come after you. Again, makes a lot of sense, at least superficially, but we need to get into whether or not these manipulations that are being alleged are actually doable and would have the impact on the crime stats that we're being told that they would have.
When our members respond to the scene of a felony offense where there's a victim reporting that a felony occurred, inevitably there will be a lieutenant or a captain that will show up on that scene and direct those members to take a report for a lesser offense. So instead of taking a report for a shooting or a stabbing or a carjacking, they will order that officer to take a report for a theft or an injured person to the hospital or a felony assault, which is not the same type of classification.
Greg Pemberton says the police department's command staff is focusing on 2 categories in order to get the numbers to fall. They are armed with a dangerous weapon an injured person to the hospital.
So essentially what we're being told by this police union representative is that when a crime occurs, whether it be a sexual assault, an assault with a weapon, a carjacking, or whatever, that somebody in a supervisory role ends up coming down to the scene of said crime and ordering the officers to take a report for a lesser offense. And he says that this is able to alter the crime data because they have specific categories that they account for, and these lesser crimes are typically not in said category. Now, it's very important for us to not just go based on gut feelings and go based on what we think might be happening, because in reality, these are specific claims about how you can hide crime in the District of Columbia's data, and we need to actually look and examine that data to understand if it's even possible. So what this guy says is that they end up putting a lot of crimes in the injured person category or in the regular ordinary assault category, which are not typically what the DC police are looking for and not what they categorize as their serious violent crimes. So obviously we have to look at the DC Metro crime data, look at the categories, and decide for ourselves if this is even possible. Now, this data set will be linked in the description of this video, as the District of Columbia actually updates it daily, so you can actually see a different data set if you watch this tomorrow versus today, depending on what instances are reported. However, when we observe the categories that are present right here, what we ultimately end up discovering is that based on what we were told by the union representative, this is actually entirely plausible. So the categories that they measure in the District of Columbia on this particular table that typically represents their violent crime data are as follows. We have homicide, sexual abuse, assault with a dangerous weapon, robbery, burglary, motor vehicle theft, theft from auto, other kinds of theft, and then arson. When we look at the year-to-date, year-over-year declines or rises in these particular categories, what we end up finding out is that sexual abuse is down by 50%, which again, if those are being moved into regular ordinary assaults, they would not appear on this table because there is no category for regular ordinary assaults. We then have assault with a dangerous weapon, which is also, according to the union, being downgraded, and that is down significantly according to the stat, down 20%. We have robbery down 28% and burglary down 20%. However, we do not see a significant decline in other kinds of thefts or other kinds of property crime. Now look, there is a decline in homicides in the District of Columbia, and I want to make something clear to everybody out there in the audience. Typically, those stats are kind of bulletproof in their manipulation because homicide is not actually the crime. Murder, manslaughter, or whatever is what will ultimately be charged. Homicide is just the manner of death, and you would have to go through a whole other mechanism in order to manipulate this in such a way in order to produce lower homicides that would almost certainly be caught immediately if you tried it, and multiple people would be fired if you try to do that. So the only stats that I 100% believe right here are those homicide stats, but everything else, them funneling those numbers into regular ordinary assaults is entirely possible. Now, of course, the DC Metro Police does have data on assaults. It is not something that they put out up in the forefront like these other crimes, so we would actually be able to examine upon investigation whether or not their regular ordinary assaults are inflated, but inflated due to the fact of reclassifications of other crimes. This would give us a good idea if there's actual merit to these accusations. In addition to that, it could be true that crime is down in the District of Columbia. However, it's not down anywhere near as significantly as being sold to us right now due to the fact that they're juking the stats, and also crime is dropping from the significant rise that we saw in DC just a couple of years ago.
When management officials are directing officers to take reports for felony assault, or if they're going back into police databases and changing offenses to felony assault is not a category of crime that's listed on the department's daily crime stats. It's also not something that's a requirement of the FBI's Uniform Crime Reporting Program. So by changing criminal offenses from, for example, ADW bat or ADW gun to felony assault, that would avoid both the MPD and the FBI from reporting that as a Part 1 or a felony offense.
Pemberton says the union has been gathering evidence for some time now by looking at reports and talking with officers all over the city.
What we've heard through our members and through members of management that are willing to talk with the union is that this is a directive from the command staff, is that they want to make sure that these classifications of these reports are adjusted over time to make sure that the overall crime stats stay down.
So the union rep basically tells you exactly what I went out of my way to explain right there. However, he adds in that they also don't report their felony assault numbers to the FBI for the Uniform Crime Report. So essentially, this is the perfect category in order to inflate, and we should be able to see those numbers. And by the way, in addition to that, we also have reports that the police union has been gathering information, gathering data in order to prove their theories about the department to be true. But again, this case, very interesting, and there's a little bit more twists and turns we have yet to examine.
As of last Monday, when we spoke with Pemberton, D.C. crime data shows violent crime was down 28%. Today, the department's website says violent crime is down 25% when compared to the same time last year, and overall crime is down 8%.
That's preposterous. There's absolutely no way crime could be down 28%. Last year, they suggested that it went down 34%.
Now, again, this is very interesting information that we're getting from this union rep, who's also implying that this kind of manipulation actually came into place in the previous year. And considering 2023 was the big year for a spike in crime in the District of Columbia, it would seem like if you wanted to manipulate the numbers, this is where you would go, or when you would decide to do that. In addition to that, we also had the Biden administration talking about how, crime actually down in the lead up to the election, and obviously the nation's capital having a significant crime spike kind of undercuts that. So again, there may be additional political motivations. But here's where things get really interesting, because what we're seeing is that this one commander is being hung out to dry by the DC Metro Police as the only one who's manipulating data. But in reality, this not only seems like retaliation against him based on a complaint that he filed, but maybe this might have been one of the few guys who had a problem with the program, because it turns out he was hit in another way by the Metro Police in a much more personal way, and this is something that we also got to get into.
And there's more to the story involving Commander Pulliam. In April, his wife, Captain Rachel Pulliam, was transferred by Chief Pamela Smith from the Youth Division to Midnights in the 7th District. Subsequently, according to 3 sources familiar with the incident and the timing of it all, Executive Assistant Chief Andre Wright ordered Commander Pulliam to pack up his wife's belongings from Youth Division and move them on his own to his wife's new assignment in the 7th District. Sources familiar with the complaint say Commander Pulliam viewed the order as retaliation. 5 law enforcement sources tell News 4 about a week later, Commander Pulliam's police powers were revoked.
So obviously that is more than a bit unusual. You have the DC Metro Police that puts this guy on leave after he files an equal opportunity complaint against the department, against a commander that's above him in particular. But just prior to that, we have an interesting situation where his wife, who had a cushy juvenile assignment that of course gave her daytime hours, was suddenly transferred to midnight out on the street in a dangerous neighborhood, and he was ordered specifically to pack up her stuff and move her over to that division. Now, if you know anything about the inner workings of law enforcement, this is very typical of retaliation in police departments, where essentially they identify where you want to be and where you least want to go, and when you get on a commander's bad side, you get sent specifically to where you least want to be. And again, making him do that, very suspicious that the DC command started getting on him about manipulating the stats after this whole back and forth and not before. So yeah, I do think that this man that's being held up as the problem is actually probably just a symptom, somebody who is ready to expose this, and he is being punished by the higher-ups at the DC Metro Police, and it is very likely that they're manipulating crime data and trying to pin it all on him in order to get away with it. But you know what? That's just my thoughts. Those are just my speculations. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. As per usual, if you like this video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about madness in the District of Columbia. Till next time.